knowing who you are. And then, of course, apart from that is also knowing where you are, right? It is a different country from India. So you can't come and behave here like you're an Indian and you belong to India. I believe I'm in Kenya and I'm Kenyan. And I have no hang-ups about being Kenyan because I don't think I need to put up my identity differently. If we identify with our people here and we act as and behave and do everything with respect. A lot of the people who come as migrants here would be working and becoming a cluster within themselves and being too aloof and not having friends, not mixing up. And that's a big problem.
Welcome to the Global Indian Podcast, the official platform for people of Indian origin. Yes, let's face it, we are everywhere. Welcome back to the show, your weekly podcast where we plunge into the human experience of being a person of Indian origin, take a second look at those countries we now call home, and tackle the big conversations that we need to have. In this episode, I travel all the way down towards Kenya to meet with the entrepreneur, philanthropist, and the leading figure within the region, Vimal Shah, where we take on a big discussion and having a look at what identity means, but also this notion of Kenyanness, and also the shifting sands of where Kenya is now heading towards. It is an inspiring conversation, to say the least. I do also have to give a quick apology. As you may hear in the podcast, I was slightly bunged up. It was a cold, nothing more than that, I can assure you. As always, I'd like to thank our dear supporters and sponsors, many of which you'll hear from shortly, as well as invite you to share your stories about what Indianness means to you, but also your experiences and what's it like in the countries that you now call home. If you'd like to find out more about the work that we do, it couldn't be easier. Simply go to www.globalindianseries.com, where you can find the entire repertoire of conversations so far, and importantly, share your content. I truly hope you enjoy this remarkable conversation.
Hello, my name is Daniel Trassa, and I'm Dean of Nova School of Business and Economics in Carcavelos, Portugal, one of Europe's leading business schools. I'm proud to be of Indian origin, and I invite you to discover these podcasts, which will look to redefine the impact that Indians and their descendants are doing all over the world. In behalf of Nova School of Business and Economics, I wish you a great 2021.
My name is Chitra Stern, and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martinal Resorts and Martinal Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian Journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martinal, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID. Have a great day.
And just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move.
What's it like to be you?
I think it's lovely. I'm Indian origin. I'm born and brought up in Kenya, studied in Kenya, lived my life in Kenya, and been all over the world. I mean, been to UK, Europe, US, Asia, Singapore, India, and I wouldn't want to stay anywhere else except being here. And I think pretty happy where I am. It's an exciting space. There's a lot more to do. I believe in being African, and I think being in Africa, we've got so much more opportunities. So it again depends on what specs you wear, right? How you look at life and how you look at yourself. I see myself in a very good position out here. We don't act as if we're Indian and we're aloof and all that stuff. We act as if we're local, and we are. I mean, as indigenous Kenyan as anybody else. Except that my skin, I gotta say, look, origin is Indian. So otherwise, yeah, it's lovely.
Well, so what does Kenyanness mean to you?
Well, I think Kenyanness means identifying with what's happened in Kenya, how Kenya has come through this whole colonized events in the past, and of course the Mau Mau struggle. My father was there, within that whole space in Nyeri. I'm born in Nyeri, and Near East, where the Mau Mau struggle happened for freedom, for independence. And I think I relate myself to being Kenyan in terms of there is a certain, certain type of personality here. We're okay with everyone. We're okay with local people, with Indians, with Europeans, and we don't have big, hatred within to say, we don't like the colonialists or whatever. And those who stayed back, they love the weather. The weather is better. The people are good. And I think, yes, being colonized, we're wearing suits and ties and stuff like that, Otherwise, school education system is very much British curriculum in the past, but now it's changing. We also have a new Kenyanness around it because I think we're unique. We're in a unique position on the world stage. And if you look at it from a strategic location, Kenya as a hub for Africa, pretty cosmopolitan area. We love our heritage, we love our wildlife, we love the weather, and we're on the equator, right? So we have 12 hours of sunshine every single day. And you can't beat this weather.
You're just rubbing salt in the wounds, aren't you?
No, Nairobi is like an air-conditioned city, right? Naturally air-conditioned. We don't have air conditioners, heaters in our offices or rooms. We don't need coolers, fans, nothing, So it's brilliant. I think it's Kenyanness is something that we relate to everyone and say, fine, here we are, and we're building a whole new nation. And then, the can-do attitude that we have. And we're in the middle of the world, right? We got the Asia side, this side. We got the European and the American side on this side. We're in a time zone that's three hours plus GMT. And
what are the biggest misconceptions then people have about you and about Africa or East Africa in general?
Well, it depends. Again, I say it depends on who's looking at it. So if you look at it from a Western influence, Western mindset, and if you look at it from a rich man's perspective sitting in New York, right, with stock market, whatever gains, they see Africa as something not significant because they think it's not even in the numbers. It doesn't speak the GDP numbers, the population numbers, the whatever incomes and per capita incomes are not significant for them because we're in a much smaller space. Again, Africa is looked at by a lot of Americans, looked at as one continent but one country. And in Africa we are 54 countries and 54 regions in terms of 54 different mindsets. But we have 5 RECs, 5 regional economic communities. Eastern Africa is very similar. West Africa is very similar. North Africa is similar. Central Africa is different, and they're all similar in there. And then South Africa, again. So 5 different RECs, and you can actually distinguish the whole of the continent. But people think it's just one country, and therefore you come to Africa. And they don't have a lot of information. It's not all out there on the internet. So the information asymmetry is big. Then the other misconception or misperception, I'd say, is, it's too dark a continent. It's insecure. Political leadership is not what you really want. We've got everything. We've got the Anglophone, we've got the Francophone, we've got Portuguese speaking 2-3 countries, Mozambique and Angola. And apart from that, of course, we've got many other different types of colonies that the British colonized, the Belgians colonized, the French colonized. And yes, based on that, we have different type of cultures that have evolved from that. The Arab influence and the slave trade happened through here. It was a trade route. So all that has happened. And I think overall, we can say that there are misperceptions. When you look at it from an Asian perspective in China looking at Africa is looking at opportunity. They weigh the specs of opportunity and say, fine, what can we do here? China 1 was about coming in and extracting minerals, taking it all away and processing it in China and then exporting it back to the Western world. So they did manufacturing. China 2 was about coming and doing the infrastructure for Africa. So Africa's infrastructure right now is practically being built by a lot of Chinese companies. Why do they do that? Because they come in with design, build, finance, own, operate, transfer schemes, whereby the local countries don't even have to go and look for the money. They come with the money and say, fine, we'll do your infrastructure for you. Pay us in installments. And that's happened too. And China 3 now, we're in China 3 right about coming in and looking at operating companies. Can we buy operating companies in Africa and run business in Africa? Because consumers in Africa, today we're about 1.3 billion. By 2050, we expect to be 2.4 billion, 2.5 billion. Now that next billion, billion and a half is what they're looking for in terms of consumption. Therefore, a lot of Chinese companies look for a different angle. India is trying to get in some together, but again, being a democracy, make big inroads. So the state doesn't help them. It's got to be private sector guys. And private sector is pretty happy within India, so they don't want to move out. So again, like I said, it depends on which specs you wear and how you look at Britain. Europe has always had inroads into Africa. And I think Britain now with Brexit in is looking and saying, can we get a much more bigger piece of Africa so we can trade with it and look at opportunities for investment and joint ventures. So Europe, done with it right now. I think they've got a lot of inroads, but mature economies, they look at it differently.
What's the biggest misconception then that people have about you as an individual?
About me? I wouldn't know. You need to ask them. Right? Well, I don't think there are many misconceptions, but I think a lot of people, depending again on what lenses they wear, if they see you as an Indian coming from India and doing something in Africa, they look at it and say, are you exploiting, right? Number one. Number two, locally, I don't have a problem with that because locally, they don't see it that way because born here, brought up here, and, I say I'm going to die here. So there's nothing that's, we're not sitting with a thing in the pocket to say I'm running off to India or running off to UK or whatever. I don't want a British passport, and we're proud of what we are. So again, like I said, ask the people who want to think differently. That's all.
That's it. Do you think that there's a changing, I suppose for you, what's really fascinating is the fact that you made your life in Kenya, but you started off obviously in a very different type of Kenya to where it was right now. What was it like for you growing up?
I went to school in Nyeri first, and then of course moved to Nairobi. That time we had the big, in Nyeri, during that time of 66, 67, 68, it was the Africanization movement. So people had to move out of smaller towns and move to Nairobi. We moved to Nairobi, but I went to school here, and schooling was okay. Schooling was mixed. It was all together. And I didn't go to any of those international schools. I went to Irish Primary, Jamhuri High School, which was cosmopolitan. We had mix of everyone there. And I didn't see any problems at all. I still have good memories of Jamhuri High School. I've been there just last month in December, and we had a big alumni thing there. We still got friends. So overall, I've always felt part of the Kenyan fabric. I never felt like I'm an Indian or from India. I tell you frankly, I can't operate in India. I think it's a different society out there. Out here, it's far more trusting, far more better and amicable. So I think overall, for me, I think it's been fun. It's been exciting. And all I see is there's opportunity to do so many things out here. There's so much that can be done. And I don't think we need to copy what's been done in New York or in Dubai. We need to be unique. Our nature, our agroforestry, our wildlife is just amazing. We have the best parks in the world, right? And the animals have been free as they are, even now, after hundreds and thousands of years. So I think overall, we've got a good thing ticking for ourselves. I don't see any problems.
That's really interesting because I like that idea. You are Kenya. You embody Kenya. And so therefore, when you see these type of tokens coming up globally, where you have this mindset that you're either an Indian in Kenya or you're Kenyan Indian, two very different parts. You obviously sit in the sense of saying Kenya means everything to me in its own right. How have you been able to do that? Because it seems that there's this whole mixture of a lot of people, if they're first generation, second generation, even third generation, that although they're born in the land, that they're from there, still their mindset is attached towards the feet of another nation. How have you been able to cultivate that mindset?
I think first and foremost is knowing who you are, number one. And then, of course, apart from that, is also knowing where you are, right? It is a different country from India. So you can't come and behave here like you're an Indian and you belong to India. I believe I'm in Kenya and I'm Kenyan. And I have no hang-ups about being Kenyan because I don't think I need to put up my identity differently. But overall, to answer your question, it's not difficult because if we identify with our people here and we act as and behave and do everything with respect every single individual. A lot of the people who come as migrants here would be working and becoming a cluster within themselves and being too aloof and not having friends, not mixing up. And that's a big problem. So I think that's another issue that I think even in England, you have that. There are clusters that form and people form in communities. They all live around that own thing. And I don't think they forget their old hang-ups about who they were. But having grown and being brought up in Kenya, we didn't have that hang-up of being in Indian. I don't know how it is in Indian villages, but we don't have that issue around. And therefore, pretty much Kenyan passport, Kenyan ownership, working in Kenya. And from here in Kenya, we're expanding into African countries. So when I look at it from that angle, I don't see any sort of problem being here locally. Now, I identify, even if I was to the president, I tell him I'm indigenous African, and they respect me for that. And again, we need to give that mutual respect. I think that's something that everybody's got to do everywhere. You need to give mutual respect to everyone who's from wherever. And there's nothing like, a class above and a class below or whatever, because the form of discrimination they had in South Africa was about color. When you move from color, you go to caste. You go from caste, you go to religion. And from that, all of that's gone away now. I think it's much more now going to be a class issue, right? It's the haves and the have-nots, and of course, the want-nots. So that's where it is in terms of, where we're going. But overall, my experience has been inspire a lot of people locally and really let them know that even they can be what I've been. So I think that's important to be a role model for them to say, you too can do it, because if I can do it in Kenya, Kenya gets a very good can-do attitude. So with that, you really don't find any resistance from everywhere. In fact, we get called into many meetings where sometimes I feel I'm the only brown person there. But it doesn't matter, because I don't look at myself as an Indian or a brown person. I look at myself as a Kenyan.
I like that. It's the fact that you have, where was your father born? Was your father born in Kenya?
My father's born in Mombasa, yeah.
And then your grandparents? Was it your grandparents that came in?
No, my grandparents came and went from here. They were coming and going. So yeah, it started from my father's side. Mombasa, he went to school in Alibdina Visram in Mombasa. And that again today is one of the best schools. But again, overall, if you look at it from an angle of where he came from, again, very, very humble beginnings, right? Yeah. So with that, I mean, he couldn't pay for his school fees in Mombasa, which is 15 shillings per term, which would be about, 0.1 of a pound.
Wow. How did the whole Uganda issue impact you guys? Because it was a neighboring country. Obviously, you would have been around at that moment in time. What was the big impact that it had on you? Did you ever feel scared at that moment?
I think Uganda was, I agree. Uganda was a good eye-opener. It was a good eye-opener for everybody to say, yeah, if you get one... actually, before that, I'd been to Uganda, I was young. And it was beautiful. It was like the Switzerland of Africa. It was really lovely. And even when President Idi Amin came in, everybody out there, they were singing praises about him, saying, yeah, now we've got a good leader and all that stuff. And then it turned around, and he turned it all around completely and went berserk. So I guess it's a learning of saying, hey, you know what, things can go wrong. And if you're not careful, if you're not, going to be, localized, things can go wrong pretty bad. And yes, since then, Africa has had its own spate of civil wars, fights. Rwanda had a big problem, and many other countries have gone through that. War and civil strife, again, a lot being caused by a lot of outsiders, but also insiders, leadership.
And so what impact did that have on you, though, the Uganda situation? Because that is your neighbor, and that are...
Yes. So a lot of them came here. A lot of them came here through Nairobi. And then, of course, they were housed here. There were camps here. And from here, they went to England or wherever they went to in the world. The eye-opener was, hey, you know what? If you don't sort of localize yourself and become one with everyone, this could become a big issue. However, in Kenya, we don't have that problem. We didn't have that problem because immediately after independence, right? In Kenya, the big farms and the big white fields, I mean, if you see from here towards Nakuru, was all owned by one governor from UK. And that was all taken. So a lot of that went into the hands of local people. So it's not been like it's a have-nots issue in Kenya. But overall, I think one needs to be able to be localizing yourself and saying, yeah, I'm here to stay. A lot of people, even from Kenya, a lot of people thought, hey, you know what? If this happens, I need to go off. And that was the exodus. So the exodus happened just immediately after that. And a lot of people just left. And they went to England or wherever because they had a right to go there from being a former British colony. Overall, that did impact people. And then, of course, there are some people who stayed back. My father was in Nyeri at that time, and from Nyeri coming down to Nairobi, being here, he'd been through the Mau Mau situation, and he knows that the people here are very good. The local people are very, very good. And therefore, if you don't relate to them, you can be aloof and say, I'm going away. But if you're working with them, they have the same aspirations as everybody else, except that they had been deprived of all that in the past by the British Raj. And therefore, they needed to get up and run. In Kenya, I think it was a lot of learning. Obviously, even some people started saying, yeah, it could be insecure out here, even in other countries in Africa. And therefore, a lot of people started securing places outside or getting passports from overseas or securing money outside and stuff like that, just as a sense of security. But overall, a few people went, a few people came back. Even after Uganda, after Amin went, and when President Museveni came in, he actually told them, we're going to give you back all your lands. A lot of people from the UK came back into Uganda and they started operating from there. Obviously, a lot, 60, 70% came back to take their wealth or belongings and take their land and give it back or sell it off. But overall, the impact was a learning that things do go wrong, they can go wrong, and therefore people needed security. So those who were insecure left, those who were not insecure and saying, look, this is it, this is where we're going to built it.
So what did your father see with that uprising when it was the independence? What was it that he witnessed in particular that held him to believe that actually, no matter what happens, we can survive here? Because again, for your father's generation, that would have been an extremely different world to be living in.
My father, having grown up here and learned the ropes locally here, he did a lot of import-export business, exported goods and all that stuff. But overall, his heart was here. And he says, look, this is where our land is. And he had 2 children, me and my brother. And he says, look, we got to take a call and a decision. If you guys want to migrate or move somewhere else, there's an option. But if you want to work here, then we got to call it a big day here. And of course, he started doing a lot of business locally into agribusiness, agri-farming. And he showed us, there's a lot of opportunity out here. Of course, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like a cakewalk, right? And at a time in 1980 when things were rough and tough, he packed up his business and he says, look, now let's look at it. At the time I graduated, my brother was here and we started from a clean slate, 3 of us, my father, my brother and myself. And we said, okay, we're not going to move from here. And if we're going to move, we're going to move together or we're going to stay here. So we had the option. We had the option to say, fine, we can go and migrate to the world because once you're educated, you have the world to your beck and call. But we thought, no, I think this is a better place. Let's do it here. And it's a place where we know people, we're localized, we can actually work and, things are not really bad here. So that was the thing. It wasn't a traumatic thing that, should I do this, should I not? That? Again, he was an entrepreneur all his life, just like I would be an entrepreneur. My son's also just done entrepreneurship. He's just finished his studies in US, basically degree in entrepreneurship. And you're not like working for somebody and saying, let me just get a salary and, stay put. So entrepreneurs don't even get a salary, right?
Yeah.
You got to work for it. You got to pay yourself. And if you can't do it, yes, you've got bad times. You would have bad times. And there have been bad times. It's not that everything was rosy. But then you have the can-do attitude to say, let's build on. And you have the belief. And I think a lot of people who had this problem were the guys who are halfway. Do I want to stay here? Do I want to stay elsewhere? And not doing anything over there, not doing anything over here. And therefore, they're stuck in the middle. And I know a lot of people who did that, and they really didn't progress either wherever they went or over here. And coming in and going away for 6 months and migrating for a while, it doesn't help. You've got to be committed to say, fine, here I am. I'm going to do this, make it happen. And then, of course, expand all over Africa. So I think that's a decision we took. As a family, we're all together. We have relatives all overseas, wherever. But again, we took a decision as a family. We're going to be here, and that's it. This is home for us.
What inspires you to keep moving? What is it that's driving you? Is it the business? Is it the impact that you're having?
So you see, there's a stage, right? There's a stage in your life which comes in and says, okay, fine, I'm 60 now. This became 60 last year. So if you look at it from that angle and say, oh, I'm done, over with, it's all over, and it's time to sort of be at sunset and just relax. I don't think that is. I think we're looking at it from it's not a bread and butter issue anymore. It's not about getting my daily bread every day and getting your income, because that's a given. But I think the overall issue is about the challenge. The challenge is that we can make a difference. We can still make a big difference. This year we've got a lot of farming initiatives to get a lot of local farmers, 30,000 farmers on stream to make them produce. Getting that and creating and making a difference for them is where the challenge is. And we've done amazing things like the Uganda project that we did. Nobody ever did oil palm. We did a 30,000 acre oil palm plantation. We've got another 30,000 acres now to plant another island and look at it. So from a can-do attitude, now people say, wow, this was never done by anybody and it can be done. That's the pleasure and that's the challenge that really drives me every day to say, okay, let's go make a difference. Let's do it differently. And a lot of times, these are things that have never been done by anybody. And sometimes everybody starts doubting themselves and say, you know what, if nobody's done it, am I a fool to start it off? I believe differently now. I believe if nobody's done it, that's the place to start off with. And there's an opportunity there that you can't, miss out on.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's the leading edge and sometimes it's the bleeding edge, right? So you do bleed. So you do have a situation, you start something new or different, it doesn't work. Its time has not come yet. And yes, you lose, so it's fine. Take it in stride. Frankly, even for people in the UK, Africa is seriously an opportunity. If you wear the right specs and say, fine, let me go to Africa, let me look at it from a different angle. Because everything needs to be done out here. Whereas if you go to Europe, you go to US, it's all been done, over with. Now they're talking about contraction, reduce consumption, reduce this, reduce that. Here we're talking about, hey, you know what? We haven't even started consuming yet, but let's consume differently. Let's be proactive in terms of how we do it. And, we save the climate, we don't destroy the environment, and still preserve life with happy, healthy living. That's what we are trying to promote. And we're saying, it's about happy, healthy living all across Africa.
Whoa, what a fantastic conversation. I think one thing is for sure for everybody listening out there in our global Indian world, the 50 Shades of Brown that we belong to, is that he is incredibly passionate about his identity. And Kenya means everything to him, as you can tell. I think what's also really amazing is the fact that this guy has, if we like to take the analogy of when life punches you down, well, this guy, he stood up at every single occasion. It's an incredible testimony to the human spirit in which we all belong to. I really do hope you enjoyed that podcast. It was a fantastic conversation to have, despite the fact of feeling brutally ill. But I'm really glad that Vimal did not hold it against us. So again, wishing you well. Thank you very much for your support and listening to our podcast every single week. And yes, next week it will be our 50th episode. 50 episodes is remarkable. It's a big achievement in itself. And also, as you may know, we did win the award in the UK by the British Asian Media Awards for New Media of the Year, but also the best podcast for 2020, which was Rahul's podcast on being judged by autism. So if you do get the chance, make sure you do listen to that podcast. It's done quite a while back, but it's all on the website. It is a definite eye-opener. As always, thank you for helping out, and I look forward for you joining us back next week, where we continue our voyage in the 50 Shades of Brown that we call life. Bye for now.